On this week's episode of the Autohaus podcast, on here it says, Western Union met up with a guy 2 weeks later, panicked when I got the title.
Okay, so
This is the Autohaus podcast. We have another very special guest today from out of state. Could you please say your name, your business, and give yourself a short introduction?
yeah, absolutely. My name is Mo Rodriguez, and I am running the AE86 Preservation Society. I also own a 85 Corolla.
Awesome. So first of all, what is AE86 Preservation Society?
So it's a business, but I want it to be a little bit more than that. The thing that I've noticed in following the market of this car is that I think the performance aspect of these cars has been covered about as well as it could be. If you want to know the curb weight of a car, of our cars, or if you want to know, spring rates, curb weight, all that stuff is covered really well. But what I've always noticed about these cars is that the interiors of these cars get very little attention. And I think that has a lot to do with the motorsport background. But if you want to know about like actual options that were available, there's really not a lot of information on them. So part of this is a business. Yes, I want to create seat covers for the end user to install themselves so they can enjoy their car and not be sitting, against hard metal springs on, poking in their back. But I also want to kind of document the interior aspect of our cars and, kind of preserve some of the intricacies of a 30-year-old plus Japanese car.
And it's interesting how the market has shifted from like you said, a purely performance or motorsports aspect where, a lot of times people just took all the interior out. Whereas now where it's 100% opposite, where people are dying for certain color interiors or certain trim options. And because no one cared before, a lot of that stuff is lost, which I think you can speak more on.
Absolutely. So, and I'm going to come clean right up front. I have thrown away more Corolla parts in my life than I would like to admit. There was a time where it just wasn't worth anything. People weren't interested in it. One of the best things you can do for a car, if you want to make it go faster, is get rid of anything that doesn't actually perform a function. And so one of the first things that happened with a lot of these cars was, the rear seats got pulled or the stock seats got thrown out and swapped with, a performance racing seat with a 4-point harness. And so, yeah, a lot of this stuff disappeared. I remember clearly throwing a set of GTS front seats just in the dumpster because I was just like, I'm not going to use these. These are spares. Nobody's going to want to pay to recover them. So, yeah, I just chucked them in the dumpster. It was just like that. So,
Sacrilege.
yeah, I totally. Yeah, I wish I could go back in time and talk to that young kid and, just try and figure out what was going on in his head.
But you know what? I'm joking. You're not the only one. I'm sure all of us have thrown away something. Guaranteed all of us have thrown away something that we totally regret now or is worth 3 times, 4 times what it was back then.
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine that people would, be interested in AC components. Back in the day, I was just like, nobody wants this stuff.
So talk a little bit more about being like, I know one thing that really piqued my interest about what you do is you really try to get the fabric as close to original colors and materials as you can. And one thing you can speak more about is actually going back and finding original suppliers of fabric.
Oh, yes. So this is kind of an interesting story. So when I decided to tackle this project, the first thing I did was try and find original fabric. So back in the Club 4AG days. I don't know if it was Moto that posted this, if he did the write up, but somebody on Club 4AG, excuse me, did a write up, and they referenced a Toyota service bulletin. And let's see, it was dated July 30th, 1987. And it says, for those interested in making your own seat cover replacements or are looking for like original material, the following copy of a Toyota service bulletin number 042 for all models. Because this information is old, there's no certainty that these companies exist or have any original material available. So underneath that is a list of about 20 different companies that were supposed to have had replacement material available. And how the automotive market works is they produce rolls of material for the current model of car, and they'll have a handful or a couple dozen leftover rolls that they will sell to material distributors, fabric distributors. And that's what this technical service bulletin was referencing. And so the first thing I did was I was calling these 20 different companies and seeing if they had this material still. And that led to another rabbit hole, because half the companies that I tried calling are no longer, doesn't seem like they're in business, or their numbers have been changed, and I couldn't find anything to follow it up. But also they were asking for part numbers. And part numbers, I had no idea. I was calling these upholstery shops and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for materials for like a 80s Toyota. Can you help me out?" And I think they did what a lot of us did in retail when they asked for you to check something in the back area, see if they have it in the back. And you go to the back and you look at the mop bucket, the janitor's closet, and then come back and be like, "Oh, sorry, there's nothing. We don't have it." But you put forth this effort of making it look like you gave it an attempt. I kind of had to go, like I mentioned, this rabbit hole, and I had to actually find part numbers, which was its own headache. So basically, the gist of it is textile manufacturers produce books that they sell to upholstery shops that have pretty much every model year and samples of every fabric that can be found in that car. For the Detroit cars that were coming off of the assembly line, every year they would get their own book. But for import models like Volkswagen, Porsche, Honda, Toyota, they got 2 books. And those 2 books covered pretty much 10 years of all import material. So I had to find those books. So that came down to a lot of trial and error, just stopping by upholstery shops and buying the owner like a 6-pack of beer to let me look through their books, their sample books. Some of these, going all the way back to the early 70s, and seeing if I could find the exact fabrics. And yeah, so that's kind of the effort that I've made in trying to locate this actual material. And so now that I have the part numbers, it's something that I'm going to do and follow up with some of these companies now that I have a part number. I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to have any of this material, but I'm going to give it a try anyways.
So, what products are you trying to offer right now?
So what I want to offer is, so the first thing I've decided recently that I want to do is, a lot of folks have cracked rear seat backs. And I've gotten a lot of interest in that. People just saying, "Hey, my interior looks pretty good except for the rear seat backs." And
You're talking about what is that material, like that fake leather material? I think all of us know what we're talking about. The on the back seats, the sun usually eats out the corners of those things.
Oh, absolutely. And once it gets to the vinyl material, it starts going after the foam.
Yeah, is that what it is? Vinyl?
Yeah, so it's vinyl. It's a synthetic plastic that is making it look like it's leather. It's a lot easier to produce and a lot cheaper to produce. So it was used in a lot of earlier 90s and 80s model cars.
From some of our conversations before, you're trying to make complete interior cloth kits. Is that correct?
That is correct. So part of the issue that in trying to locate original fabric and coming up short, I've found that the best way to make a interior such as ours that are 30 plus years old look good and uniform throughout the car is by recovering the front and back seats in.
Oh, sorry, Mo. Give me 1 second.
Oh, no problem.
All right, sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Continue.
no worries, no worries. So I found that in order to make the interior of a Corolla look good from front to back, it comes down to just replacing all of the cloth from front to back as far as the front seats and the rear seats so they match perfectly. Just how it is right now, finding a material that is an exact identical match with the original material is just not feasible at the time being. If that ever comes up and changes, it's definitely something I want to pursue. But for the time being, I want to produce kits that can get people, like freshen up people's interiors and make them look and feel good.
Yeah, I think that's that's totally what we need right now. Is a lot of people, the seats are torn up, the foam is maybe not even there anymore, and at this point, it's like if my seat can at least look close to factory and feel good, then I'm completely happy with that, just as is right now.
Absolutely. I hear you there. I've got metal exposed on some of the seats in my car as well. So I hear you.
Talk about so do you also plan on making some of the foam for the seats as well, the front and rear seats?
Yes. So one of the cool things about this process that I'm trying to do, it's frustrating. I would like to get everything done right away, but I do understand that some of this is going to be building up to an end goal. And so the first stage of the project is to get seat covers available. And what I found in most of our Corollas, the really damaged areas in the full interior is the passenger side, what they call the bolster, which is, making contact with your left kidney, and the bottom seat cushion that's touching like your left thigh if you're sitting in the driver's seat. And what I've found is that a lot of the times, if we can address just those areas in patching up the foam, we can get us by until I'm able to produce brand new foam, which I would love to do. A lot of us didn't get these cars until they were 20 years old already, and this, foam was a little broken down, and the fabric was a little tattered. And so I'd love to give people the opportunity to sit in a fresh seat that's supportive and gets the job done and looking right.
Yeah, because I'll tell you a personal story why I was so curious about the foam. So when I bought my car, um, I hate to say it, but the previous owner of my car was a little bit of a hoarder. So there was like, I swear I took like 5 trash bags of stuff out of my car when I bought it. And under all the trash and like the freeze dried fabric that was in there, um, there was a half open quart of oil that emptied itself onto the back seat bottom. So that foam got
Oh,
soaked with oil, and at that point, I'm like, is this fabric, can I even save this fabric anymore? And then this foam is like a molded piece. Like, can I even squeeze all the oil out of the foam? So, like you said, like, what's my option? So I ended up throwing that whole piece away.
Well, I totally understand that. If it makes you feel any better, most foam is petroleum based. So the oil mixing with the foam, it's kind of one and the same, just in a different phase. Uh, but yeah, no, I totally get it. Totally get it. Hindsight being what it is, as long as it didn't, degrade the foam, it probably would have been salvageable. In fact, I think I have the rear seat that I'm prototyping with had the same problem. I think somebody left like an oil pan or half a quart of oil or something, and exact same thing happened. So when I removed the foam, the seat cover, excuse me, there was same thing. So I feel you, bro.
Speaking of upholstery work, going back, I've noticed on your Instagram, you've started showing kind of like your backstory, like your tools, your particular sewing machine. Let's go all the way back. How did this even start? Like, how did you get into upholstery or sewing in the first place?
Oh yeah, it's kind of there are aspects of the story that are interesting and aspects that are just kind of I guess what seems normal to me, but I come from a long line of sewers. My grandmother was a big sewer, and my mother was a sewer, and I randomly got thrown into a sewing class in seventh grade, and I discovered that I was kind of a big fan of sewing. I don't know why. It just seemed like it was an interesting thing to do. I mean, there was a lot of ladies in the class. I mean, there was nothing wrong with that. But yeah, so I actually started attempting, and I'm using attempting like very loosely, making like shift boots out of vinyl with my mom's sewing machine. And I had just the worst time with it because the home sewing machine is just not designed to handle big, thick material like vinyl and leather. So I got super frustrated. I would try, and the sewing machine would skip stitches and bind up, and I'd run into a lot of issues like that. But that's where it all started. I remember watching. I mean, I'm pretty sure Ezekiel that you watched Pimp My Ride. Did you ever
Oh,
watch that?
yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And then I know where you're getting Ish, right? The
Oh,
interior guy.
Ish, dude, the man,
Yeah.
dude. So one of my biggest pet peeves with Pimp My Ride was, they focused on all the paint work and they focused on, all the gadgets that they were installing. And they showed Ish for like 15 seconds making these amazing seat covers. And then they're like, yep, and that's all the FaceTime Ish gets out of this episode. And I was so bummed because that's what appealed to me. I love like all these Pimp My Rides or overhauling or any of these car build shows. They always seem to just like fly over the upholstery stuff, and that was my jam, and that's what I was excited about.
Has this always been this way? Your passion for interior has been like automotive upholstery. Have you done like any other sort of like sewing work?
I've gotten wrangled into a few household projects here, from time to time, making, recovering some kitchen seats for my sister or making some pillows or, a couple weeks ago, I shortened some curtains in my house. So, I'm open to different kinds of business for sure. That's a joke. I don't want to do any of that. Sorry.
So
But
let's hear about your Corolla 85 GTS coupe.
yes, so this is actually my first coupe. I've had three hatchbacks, sold all of them and regretted every one. And yeah, I just got back into the game actually a couple of years ago. There was a brief 3 or 4 year stint where I didn't own a Corolla, and I kind of felt like I was done with cars. And dude, I got the itch, man. I couldn't uh, I couldn't stay away from it, I guess. So I started looking. At the time, I was living in Washington, and I swear, Craigslist, these things were popping up like, two or three at a time. I was like, man, so I was born and raised in Idaho, and I would look for Corollas, and one would show up like once every 2 years, it seemed. And then when I went to Washington, it seemed like they were popping up all over the place. So I kind of got the itch again, and I was like, man, I gotta get another one. And so, of course, hatchbacks have gone up in price substantially. And so I'm like, well, I've never had a coupe before, and I'd love to get back in the game. So I started looking, and I found one that met the budget and was something that I could start from for sure.
What is it about the Pacific Northwest that attracts this sort of car culture? Because I know it's like drifting's big up there, like Shade Dynasty, Panic Wire, all those guys are up there. What is it about the Pacific Northwest in particular?
I've got a couple of theories. I think one of the theories is kids messing around in the rain has got to be part of it. And the other part, man, I think it's just maybe it has to do with the climate up there. Just, not as much snow and just people getting out there and just getting after it.
Interesting. So,
That's that seems to be the best, my best guess.
so I have some notes in front of me that you kindly sent to me beforehand, just about like some topics and then your background. So on here it says Western Union met up with a guy 2 weeks later, panicked when I got the title.
Okay, so yeah, so I decided in 2003 that I wanted a Corolla, and I was like, I'm going to get one someday. Um, and so I was looking on and off, and I started saving up some money. And this was in 2007. A guy posted up on Craigslist. He just said, "Hey, I've got this, 85 Corolla. It has this many miles on it. I think it was in like 200,000 miles. I think is what it had on it." And he's like, "It's in pretty good condition for its age, and I think it has a 4AG E engine in it." And so I was like, "Oh dang! Like I
Did
think
he
this
know or
is the
did he
one."
think?
I mean, it said I'm pretty sure it said he thought, and
Oh my
so I
God.
was like, "Oh, geez, okay."
There's a question mark right there.
Yeah, exactly. So that adds to the suspense of the story. So yeah, so I call the guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just had an offer for this." And I did the scumbag move of saying, "If I offer you an extra $300, will you sell it to me?" And he's like, sure." And he's like, "Yeah, just, write me a Western Union, check, and, you know, I'll sell it to you." And I was like, "Okay." So I've never written a Western Union. I've never sent money Western Union, like, ever. And I sent out, I think I wrote it out, I think it's like $2,300. And I sent it. There wasn't a picture on the Craigslist ad or anything. So I sent the guy Western Union.
This
And
was this local, or it sounds like it was not local.
so it wasn't local. The guy was actually in northern Idaho, and I
Okay.
was in the Boise area.
Okay.
So I sent it to him, and he's like, "Okay, cool. I'll send you the title." And then, like, after that, like the fraud warning on the side of Craigslist where it says never send any
Of course.
money via Western Union.
Yeah.
And so I start sweating bullets. I'm like, "Oh my God, like, did I just get, dude, I think I just got scammed." Because if I remember correctly, like, communication wasn't solid. Like, it was kind of iffy. And so I waited like a week, and then in the mail, I received the title, and it said AE88. And I was like, "Oh no, what did I do?" Like, I wanted to, AE86, and like, oh shit, like I think I bought an FX, or maybe the 5-door weird Corolla. I'm like, "Oh shit, like, I can't believe I did this." And so, like, I hopped on the internet, I started doing research. I'm like, "Oh, oh, AE88 is good in the United States. Oh, this is fantastic. Okay, cool, great. So the guy's like, oh, he calls me up. He's like, hey, I'm ready to drop the car off to you. I've got to drive 3 hours to drop it off. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so we arranged to meet at a Home Depot right outside of Boise. And I was waiting there. And the guy showed up like 2.5 hours late. Like the whole time I was like, dude, I think I got scammed. Like there's no way in heck. Like this guy's not here. You know, he said he would be here, noon, and it's like 2:30. Like I don't know about this guy. And I'm about to leave. I'm there with my brother. Like I'm feeling really shitty about things, and I'm like, oh man, come on, let's get out of here. And then I see the guy pulling in, and he's got it's the silver GTS hatchback. And I was like, oh my God, like this is, dude, I didn't get scammed, one. And then two, it's like, oh, dude, it's the Corolla, man. Oh man. So I was so pumped. And at the time I was dating my girlfriend, who's my wife now. And I had to explain for multiple hours why I was so excited about this car that I just bought. I still don't think she understands, but that's all right. So yeah, that's the story of me getting my first Corolla, and it was yes, it was suspenseful to say the least.
Yeah. So I see here it says you started as an upholstery apprentice in approximately 2006. Tell us about being an upholstery apprentice.
Yes, absolutely. So I worked for a little upholstery shop in Idaho, and
Was
so
this
the
like
first thing
was this like automotive upholstery? Was this furniture?
so it was automotive, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to the guy and I said, I've been getting hit up by Wyotech, and Wyotech has like this, they've got this like degree for upholstery. And what do you think about that? Like, if you were going to be hiring like an upholstery guy, like, what would you think about someone with a upholstery degree from Wyotech on like their resume? And the guy's like, well, he's like, I've had one guy from Wyotech, and I feel like I had to retrain him from the ground up. He's like, well, why don't you just come work for me, and I'll show you some stuff. And I was like, okay, sure, yeah. And so I started at the upholstery shop, and for the first several months, all I did was take seats apart. I didn't do any sewing for like the first 4 months. Yeah, I started on all sorts of different cars. I didn't work on a lot of fancy cars. All I worked on was like Ford Aerostars, and I think like I worked on a ton of Crown Victorias that were owned by like a private security firm, and just like the human sweat and grime that was coming off those security guards, I don't know if I'll ever be the same.
Oh my
I'll
God.
put it that way. I mean, we're talking people sitting in a car for like 8-hour shifts and never leaving. Yeah, it's good. They got a little ripe, but yeah, I started sewing a little later. I will say my boss, fantastic human being, real salt of the earth kind of person, very generous for giving me the opportunity. Was not the best teacher, but a fantastic person, and I'll say that till the day I die.
So the next thing I see on our list, in January 8th, 2009, Club 4AG DIY seat cover post. Talk about that.
Okay, so back when Club 4AG was the tome of information for our cars, and there is still a tome of information on that forum. I wish that it was like just hopping. I wish it was like the number one website that everyone went to, but it's looking a little scarce there these days. But I had I had gotten so much information from the folks at Club 4AG, and you know, they humored all of my dumb questions about, oh geez, like I don't know, like changing the gear oil in my transmission, like all the dumb questions that I posted up. And I noticed that there was nothing when it came to like interior. Like every once in a while, someone would post up something about like, changing the color of their door panels, or how to install 4x9s in their door panels, and like installing tweeters and stuff like that. And I was like, I think I could throw up like a some sort of DIY with like the information that I have. Maybe this is an opportunity I can give back and maybe help some people out. And so I did a write up. I remember vividly writing on top of like the images in MS Paint, just like drawing arrows and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. And so I did the whole breakdown, what it takes to from taking a seat apart to making patterns to sewing to to bring a seat back to life. And that was kind of my claim to fame on the 4AG forum. And at the time, I had a couple of people ask me, I said, hey, would you ever want to, produce like some sort of kit? And I was like, well, I'd think about it, but, it all depends on demand, if anybody's really interested. And at the time, I think I got maybe like two people that were like, yeah, I'd throw a few bucks your way if you wanted to make a seat, a seat cover kit. And I was like, it's like, two people, that's that's a lot of work for just like two people. Like I don't know how sustainable that would be. And so I was just like, okay, well, that's fine. Life transitions happened, and I was just like, then I kind of got out of cars for a little bit, and I completely forgot about it. And then a guy by the name of Scott, a couple years ago, like he contacted me through Facebook, and I was like, dude, how on earth did you get a hold of me? And he's like, yo, dude, he's like, are you Poser for Life from like Club 4AG? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, you did the DIY thing, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. And he's like, oh, it's like cool. Yeah, I just always wondered what happened to you, and I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I was like, oh, that's super cool. And that got the wheels, started turning again. And and then I threw out a something on Facebook and on one of the Corolla groups, and I was just like, yo, would anybody be interested in anything like like seat covers for their car? And this time around, the reception has been tenfold. Like there were. I'm surprised how many people have been following the process and really excited about the project. And and it's kind of begun to roll into something that's that's becoming viable. And so shout out to Scott for contacting me.
Back in 2009, when you made that seat cover post, besides the like lukewarm or like little response of two people contacting you, do you remember what was the response like on that forum thread?
I think there was a lot of people that were excited about the idea, for sure. I think the people that like to watch how it's made, like on the Discovery Channel,
Mm-hmm.
just like the behind the scenes, like the making of something, like how things come together. I think a lot of people were really fascinated by that. But I think a lot of people were also intimidated because they're like, well, I don't have a heavy duty sewing machine. I don't know anybody who does. And I don't know if I want to invest the money to see if I would even want to do this. And so I kind of see now that it's like, yeah, although it was maybe a helpful DIY post, I realize now that a lot of people maybe it still would have been intimidating for somebody who had no experience sewing.
I think it's interesting that like in the heyday of Club 4AG, so like pre 2010, there was actually a lot of support for the chassis, right? As I'm talking about like performance shops, performance companies, there was like a lot of new parts still getting rolled out for this chassis. But yet, it's only like right now, 10 plus years forward that starting to get like an even stronger resurgence for this chassis.
Yeah, absolutely. And you summed it up perfectly. Back in the day, man, it was all about performance. This was an affordable, platform to do, you know, automotive sports, drifting, autocross, and that's entirely where the market was aimed at. I mean, it seemed like the only interior part that people were really excited about were like mint dashes. And they're like, well, dash looks great in a track car or a drift car. You know, to hell with the carpet and everything else is what it seemed to be, in the pre 2010 era for sure.
The other two things I can think about is cup holders.
Dude, somebody out there with the skill and the ability they're sitting on a mint of money. Somebody's got to start producing that flimsy, cheap ass cup holder that went in the center console. Somebody's got to do it. Message me if you're interested in making one of those, please.
Are, so that leads up to, I saw recently in your most recent Instagram post that are you starting to make those like, so the seat bolts to the floor in four places, and I know for sure, is it all four of those bolt hole covers, those plastic things? All four of them take a plastic cover for the bolts?
I believe so.
And then are you 3D printing those? Do you plan to make those? What's the story with those? That really intrigued me.
Yeah. So, whenever people talk about unicorn parts for these cars, like people are like, oh yeah, Formula Atlantic, internals. We're talking like original Toyota fog lights, the cup holder. These are all the things that I hear a lot of people talk about. And I'm like, dude, show me the bolt covers, man. That's what I want. So I'm in talks with somebody right now locally who makes some parts for Celicas, which are Corolla cousins, of course. And so we're exploring that avenue. And so for when it comes to manufacturing parts for such a niche vehicle, there is this trade-off between being able to make them, finding a manufacturer that can make small quantities and also making it so it's somewhat affordable. I'm not talking like cheap. I'm just saying like nobody wants to spend $1,800 on bolt covers. So that's kind of been the goal of this whole project is to keep it small enough scale that it can be sustainable and make it so that people have access to this stuff and not having to purchase quantities of 20,000 bolt covers, stuff like that.
Hey, you would be surprised. I know 1,800 for some bolt covers is a stretch, but I don't know if you've listened to last week with Max Pham from Hawaii. He said he bought
Yes.
brand new front bumper skin for $200 from the dealer. And I think
I did hear that.
yeah, and then just recently, like, out here in NorCal, if you pay four figures, 12, 13, $1,400 for that front skin right now, that's, for me, that's like, yeah, if that thing's in good enough condition, that's pretty much what they go for now. So yeah, I think, especially now with these cars getting this resurgence, especially in the area of restoration, you'd be surprised what people would, new old stock or like restoration stuff is, the price that people would be willing to pay now.
I'm not surprised at all. When I heard that on the podcast last week, I nearly drove off the road because it's
Oh
like
man.
$200. It's like, oh man, that could have been retirement for me if I bought out all of Toyota's old bumper skins. But yeah, I mean, so for me, the goal has been like, how can we make this chassis continue to be sustainable and be something that people can enjoy without the fear of, you know, every time they sit in a seat, you know, this seat's like degrading belief, like underneath them every time they drive it.
Yeah.
And just like, well, is this trip to the grocery store worth it? Or is this track day going to be worth, sacrificing the seat or the interior? And I just want people, I want people to be able to have that clean, comfortable interior and, enjoy their car that much more.
I think another thing a lot of consumers typically don't think about as far as in the realm of like pricing for parts for these cars now is like a lot of small scale, not even manufacturing, is like privateers such as yourself, myself. There's others like, Panic Wire or like Battle Garage, where it's typically like one dude. So, and you have to think making parts for one particular chassis that was only out for 3 years. So, they have to price things out as such because they're not doing, a million, a billion units for the mass market. And then the same thing is like these small batch, small scale, this stuff takes time. You're not going to Amazon Prime this stuff, in 2 days, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the word, so I swore to myself at a very young age that I would never be a business owner because I watched my parents, lose their, practically lose their mind trying to keep a small business afloat. So, but I listened to your motivational podcast, and I went out and I filed my business license paperwork after that. I was so jazzed.
Dude,
So
congratulations, man. I'm so glad you did that.
yeah, thank you. So yeah, one thing I would love to just get across to everybody is like, if I could do this for free, I would, but I live in the real world and I've got to make this some sort of sustainable, um, sustainable project. Like it's got to be able to keep going and keep moving forward and keep myself motivated to keep doing this. So money, I mean, everybody I've told about this small business venture is, I don't know, when I tell them like the type of cars that we're working on and stuff, like everybody has made the point clear that this is a foolish business venture, but I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about the future for it.
And equally, I'm as excited for you, man. I'm really like, again, man, so many props for you to going out there and actually, getting some paperwork done, getting your business license, 2 feet, jumping 2 feet into the ocean.
Oh, geez, yeah. I will. I'll tell you how the bottom of the ocean looks
Oh
in a few
man.
months.
Hey, so we're coming up on a 1 hour mark.
Okay.
There's one topic that I'm personally interested in that we had a discussion before the podcast about. So going back to my most recent solo motivation episode, and
Yes.
you briefly talked about how the food service industry where you are at has been adapting and finding success in adapting to like our current climate of shelter in place. Because yeah, talk about that. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that I'm going to share with you is completely anecdotal. It's stuff that I've observed firsthand, and I can't tell you, you know, uh, how well everything is going. But I can tell you that, it's really been interesting that there have been a few restaurants that I patronize regularly, One of the favorite restaurants that I've gone to have they just put a close for business sign up, and that's it. That was like the first week of the shelter in place. They just threw a sign up and I'm just like, nope, we're closed. There is a chicken sandwich restaurant in downtown Salt Lake City that has collaborated with an ice cream shop locally, and they have it set up so the chicken sandwich place has purchased, I believe, a bunch of ice cream from the ice cream shop. And when you purchase a certain amount of chicken sandwiches, they throw in ice cream. And so there's kind of this, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Together we'll get through this, which I thought was just a really clever idea and just just a great way to look at something that could be considered a business ender to possibly just a business booster, and looking at this as an opportunity rather than a hindrance. Another example, there is a company called Five Wives Distillery, and they make vodka and gin. And like right after the pandemic, was in full swing, they started making hand sanitizer like right out of the gate. And I was like, whoa, what a great idea. I wouldn't have thought of that in 100 years. And they were just right on the ball. And they've been delivering this hand sanitizer to some of the local hospitals as a good as a good deed. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, what I hope comes from this, is that I hope a lot of people remember this time and think about the companies that really stepped up to help out, to be community oriented, to look out for other people. And when business gets back to normal, that they remember, like, oh yeah, that company, they really stood up and really took initiative and really helped out. And yeah, that's my hope for the future as far as what I've seen in local Salt Lake area.
Yeah, I was really surprised that you mentioned like companies were able to find success in this time, because personally from what I've seen out here in the Bay Area is that all I hear is restaurants asking for help, and like people suffer, like the food service industry suffering out here. I don't, testament to what you said, with any business, the climate change is you have to pivot and like adapt to how it changes. Unfortunately, there's some stuff like there's always like little points in history or in the world where you can see like something's coming and I need to adapt before this shows up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, like, to give you one example, a lot of service based industries, so like food service, for myself, offering physical repair work as a service, we've seen the shift of like, you cannot have just a service only business and have that sustainable. And I'll tell you one example why. Like a lot of like media and marketing literature that I listen to or read are saying, if you're a business right now, no matter what business in right now, you need to be a media and marketing business first.
Uh,
So no matter what you are, if you're a coffee shop, if you're a bakery, if you're a tech company, if you're an automotive repair place, you need some sort, you need to essentially be a media company first.
Absolutely.
I mean, so unfortunately, I think about like, this is like, we can see how the world is changing. Like I said, you cannot, I believe you cannot just be a service only business now. And I think of stuff like, if, for example, if you're a coffee shop in Fremont, why don't you have the Fremont Coffee podcast, and you would dominate the market in your city, because you can go macro and micro, or yeah, micro and macro in your city, in your region, or nation worldwide with your marketing. So if one really famous example I that really touched me was Barbara Cochran from Shark Tank. Are you familiar with her?
I'm familiar with the show. I can't
Okay.
say that I'm familiar with her though.
So Barbara Cochran is a real estate mogul, and she essentially started with nothing. Like just working as um, like a like a desk person at a real estate place. But how she got her start was she made her own newspaper, like the Cochrane Report, and that would advertise all this like real estate facts and figures. And all of a sudden, even though she wasn't really anyone at the time, all of a sudden she became the authority in her region for real estate.
Wow, man, that ambition, that drive, it's admirable. And I think, like you said, podcasting. I mean, we're looking at a very interesting time where you have people. I don't know about all you guys listening right now, but at my job, I am starved for entertainment while I'm at work. I have a job where I can throw my headphones in and listen, and the ability, having a podcast, and you got people desperate to listen to stuff, and I think what a great opportunity.
So I guess my advice to you is like continue what you're doing, but always try to build out your media work because I feel like the world really needs to see what you're doing. And I think once you get a first you have to get a following behind you, and then you have to your following, you need to build depth with that following, and so like they'll go up to bat for you and start supporting you. And from that point, like I think things will line up where like, okay, I have this, and this where I can start making kits now. So, things will line up if you follow, kind of that strategy.
Absolutely. And I've got to, say thank you to everybody that's been supporting me so far. It's been a double-edged sword, I will say. I thought, developing this business from the ground up and showing it on social media would just be interesting for a lot of folks. But at the same time, I've had people like, yo, when are you going to get those kits ready, bro? I'm ready to go. And I'm like, oh, shit. Like, oh, yeah, dude, yes, I want to keep going. Yes, I want to get a kit ready for you. But there are also things that need to fall in line before that happens. But yes, absolutely.
From like an outsider's point looking in, if I'm just like a fan of yours, I'm looking at your Instagram, I'm pumped for these kits. What can I do to help you out to expedite so like I can start buying a kit from you?
So hands down right now, I think by far the most helpful thing for me would be I would like to get a better feel for like what people are looking for exactly. Like, okay, shoot me a DM and say, hey, I'm all about that ZenCube Red interior. That's what I'm looking for. And just to get a pulse for what people are doing, what people want in their cars. If I think right now Zenki is going to be leading the way, just because the material sourcing is closer to pulling the trigger on that. And so, let me know what you're interested in. Let me know what your time frame is, and yeah, let me know colors. I think is the big thing right now.
Awesome. So we're a little past our 1 hour mark. We can privately like talk for a little bit after this, but we'll wrap it up here. So yeah, Mo, I want to thank you so much again for joining me on the podcast. I mean, we have so much more to talk about, so definitely I'd love to have you on again. We'll schedule multiple of these. What do you think about that?
I love that. That sounds amazing.
Awesome. So where can we find you, and how can we get in contact with you?
So best way to get a hold of me right now is AE86 Preservation Society on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. It just doesn't get updated as frequently there, but Instagram for sure. Shoot me a DM. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to help.
Yeah, you heard it, you guys. Any questions, any requests, make sure to shoot Mo a message because the more feedback Mo can get from you guys, the better he can cater to what you guys need as far as requirements for when we can finally buy interior kits.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, man.
All right, cool. Thanks again, man. We'll definitely have you on again.
Look forward to it, man. Thank you so much.
All right.